ZocDoc is a place to not only find a doctor, but to find one who has amazing reviews and that takes your insurance. We're talking about thousands of top-rated patient-reviewed doctors and specialists. Book an appointment with a few taps in their app and start feeling better, faster with ZocDoc. It really couldn't be easier. I use ZocDoc and you should too. Go to ZocDoc.com/something and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/something. ZocDoc.com/something.
Hi, I'm Steffany Strange. Want to hear something scary?
We listen to scary stories to have fun, but if we don't pay attention to the lessons and warnings they carry, we might end up repeating the same mistakes from the past. Kimura-sensei always loved taking his elementary school students on field trips. However, on this particular trip, things took a wild turn. As the students were heading back on the long bus ride home, they began feeling restless. At first, it was just paper airplanes hitting Kimura-sensei's head. But then the students started getting up and jumping over seats. Kimura-sensei realized he needed to take action and do something about it. He promised the kids some spooky stories if they behaved, and they quickly sat back down. Kimura-sensei began with the Tale of the Monkey Nightmare. Every time he finished a story, they begged for another. And Kimura-sensei happily agreed to tell more stories, and the students sat mesmerized, hanging on to his every word as he told the story of the Nuke-kubi and the Shoromogo and the Yuki-onna. Then suddenly, one student shouted, "Tell us about the Gozu." The bus fell into a silence as eager whispers filled the air. Excitement buzzed among the students, their eyes wide with anticipation. They yearned to hear the band story, hungry for the thrill it promised, in hopes of unraveling the mystery behind its terrifying content. Others looked terrified, including a student named Yui. The color drained her face, just thinking about the horror stories she had heard about the scariest story. She wasn't alone. Several of the other children were scared. A small boy even began to shake. It was alleged that anyone who heard the ghostly tale would be filled with such dread. They would quiver violently for days, then either be traumatized forever or die from panic, having been literally scared to death. So many people had been affected by the story that the original manuscripts were destroyed with only a couple fragmented copies scattered across the land. Kimura-sensei claimed to know the story. Though he couldn't find a complete version, he managed to piece together enough accounts during his studies. Just as he was about to begin, a whimper escaped Yui, her eyes filled with tears, and suddenly the teacher snapped back to reality, realizing he couldn't frighten the young children with such a chilling tale. He promised not to utter a word about the Gozu, the terrifying cowhead creature. He knew it was simply too overwhelming for them, and he should have known better. After an hour on the bus, a few of the students grew restless once again, and one mischievous troublemaker initiated a chant amongst the others. "Cowhead!" And a few others joined in. Just as the third chant began, Kimura-sensei swiftly rose, signaling for them to hush and take their seats. He promised to share the forbidden story if they remained quiet. Before he was able to complete the first sentence of the story, Yui and some of the other frightened students shouted, "Stop! Don't tell us!" as they hugged one another, crying. But the teacher didn't stop. His eyes turned black and expressionless. His body was taken over by force as he spoke, not allowing him to stop even if he wanted to. Sinking back down on the seat, Yui curled up in a ball and covered her ears, desperate not to listen, but some of the words broke through. There was a small forsaken village in the middle of nowhere, and archaeologists were trying to find out why it was abandoned. They dug up a terrifying skeleton with the head of a cow and the body of a man. The investigation led them to discover that years ago, the village had been put under a spell of starvation. Everybody in the town was dying of hunger. After devouring the livestock and their horses, they moved on to their pets, dogs, cats, whatever they could find. After no food was left and people were starving to death, one day, a peculiar figure walked into the village, the Gozu. This terrifying creature had the head of a cow and the body of a man, but the villagers weren't afraid. They were starving and started attacking him, eventually brutally killing him. They tore at his flesh, ripped his body to pieces, and then ate him. Hell rained down, and that was the last thing Yui heard before she began screaming loudly, so she was unable to hear any more of the terrible story. About an hour later, Kimura-sensei snapped back to reality. To his horror, he realized that the bus had crashed and flipped into a ditch. The medical staff had pulled him and most of the students out. But sadly, the bus driver lay lifeless against the steering wheel. It was truly a chilling scene. Yui stood out from the chaos even when everything else was in turmoil. She was unharmed and aware of everything around her. While many students suffered broken bones, concussions, and foaming from their mouths, she was terrified, upset, and panicked. Nonetheless, she maintained her composure and courageously shared her account with the police. Yui revealed that she had managed to block out parts of the incident by screaming. Kimura-sensei went over to try to comfort her, but pushed him away with a stern look on her face. "You're not my teacher," she whispered. She was aware that her sensei seemed back to normal, and the other students were not fazed or perhaps even noticed the black inhuman eyes of the Gozu that possessed her teacher that day, an image she would never forget. But she couldn't share the feeling that at any moment, he, the Gozu, may return and raise havoc yet again.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you ever find that just as you're trying to fall asleep, your brain suddenly won't stop talking? Did I remember to do this? Did I call that person back? Where's my cat? I discovered new skills in therapy that helped me stay organized and work on my time management so I could get a good night's rest. And I prefer to speak with someone online. No matter where I am in the world, I never miss therapy. One of the best options I've found is BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just complete a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/scary to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/scary.
Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.